My name is Dr. Marcel Mbamalo, the publisher, Prime Business Africa. You're welcome to the 5th edition of Prime Business Africa's Socio-economic and Entrepreneurship Development Series. This is our 5th edition, having launched operations in June this year. We've been able, by the grace of God and your support, been able to do 5 editions of this very important program, with which we x-ray the issues of development in Africa, economic issues, things that are worth discussing to engender socio-economic development in Africa. Today, we have very important personalities to discuss. Our lead speaker for today, who incidentally is celebrating his birthday in November. And because we are having a program that borders on entrepreneurship, and his belief in entrepreneurship demands that he participate. So when we reached out to him, he expressed delight to participate. And today he's our lead speaker, Nze Chidi Duru. We are grateful that he agreed to speak at this event, month of November being his month for entrepreneurship. And our moderator today, who incidentally also is a member of our editorial board, also on the board of Newstype Publications Limited, publishers of Prime Business Africa. Ambassador Eloho Utobo will be the moderator for today, and he is the director of Newstype Publications Limited, publishers of Prime Business Africa. Utobo is a non-resident fellow in Peace Building and Global Economic Policy at the Global Governance Institute, Brussels, Belgium. He had previously held the position of director and deputy head of the United Nations Peace Building Support Office at the United Nations headquarters, New York, where he also acted as the Assistant Secretary General in 2009. Today, you can agree with me that we'll have no better person to moderate Prime Business Africa's Seats 5 because of the topic, which borders on AfCFTA in Africa. AfCFTA was just launched in January, and the full meaning of that acronym is the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The agreement was signed in March 2018 by 44 countries to favor small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs. Research says SMEs are responsible for more than 80% of Africa employment and 50% of its GDP. However, trading under the agreement finally took effect on January 1, 2021, January 1 this year. Now, the question that begs for answer is, how is AfCFTA living up to its potentials among the intended recipients, or intended participants, African countries? Nigeria just signed to it, was about the last country to sign onto the project. So as the largest free trade agreement, which has a market size in the region of $3 trillion, the AfCFTA will cover GDP of $2.5 trillion of the market. So the trade initiative will also diversify intra-African trade, as it would encourage more industrial goods as opposed to extractive goods and natural resources like oil. With the immense benefits inherent in the signing of this treaty, some of which include creating a single market for goods and services to increase trading among African nations, boosting intra-African trade by 52.3% once import duties and non-tariff barriers are eliminated, as well as fostering competitive manufacturing. There are bound to be impending challenges, especially those which affect small and medium enterprises, medium-scale enterprises. So this brings us to why we are here, the very core of our discussion today. So how will startups take advantage of these benefits and mitigate the challenges? So is the AfCFTA the next big thing that will happen to the African economy? In that next, I encourage us to just take a deep dive into the provisions of the agreement and create lasting strategies that will aid the actualization of its objectives. We have today someone who is sound on that topic, the very first writer of our paper, Prime Business Africa Policy Briefing Series papers. Professor, I call him Professor because he's more of a professor than an ambassador. Ambassador Eloho Otobo is the moderator, so I'll hand over to him to pilot the affairs and give us the house rules of what we're going to do. Ambassador Eloho, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Marcel, for that introduction. Let me begin by saying that talking about house rule, my intention is to give 15 minutes to the lead speaker and 10 minutes to each of the other speakers. The idea is to give us enough time for Q&A and for people to feel part of it, because I always find it very frustrating after a long discussion that members of the audience don't have enough time to pose questions to the speaker. So that's going to be house rule number 1. Moreover, I expect that the speakers will try as much as possible to keep to this allotted time in order to free space. Now, with that, I'm going to supplement the comments that Marcel has made about the African Continental Free Trade Area with a few brief remarks. The first is that as of today, 39 out of 55 African countries have ratified the AfCFTA. Agreement has been reached at 87.6% on the convergence of rules of origin. Rules of origin refers to the fact that as the trading begins, many African countries will like the goods that have been traded to be made in Africa. And that's why that agreement on the rules of origins are important. The Secretary General of the AfCFTA said yesterday that the only areas where agreement has not been reached about the rules of origin are in textiles and automotive. So let me give some other data. Africa accounts for 17% of the world population, but it accounts for 3% of world trade and 3% of world GDP. So you can see how low we are. Intra-African trade also stands at 17%, compared to over 70% among EU countries, 60% among Asian countries, and 50% among Latin American countries. This shows that Africa has a lot of catching up to do in terms of trading among itself. And even more disturbingly, Marcel was talking just now about industrialization and industrial products. Primary commodities, oil, gas, other raw materials, cocoa, coffee, account for 70% of Africa's trade with the rest of the world, which shows the challenge that we have. Now, among the expected benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area are these. 1, the AfCFTA will dramatically improve both intra-African trade and inter-African trade, that is trade between Africa and the rest of the world. Projections by the Economic Commission of Africa for Africa and the IMF shows that AfCFTA will reduce the number of people living in absolute poverty by 30 million by 2025. As a result of AfCFTA, it's expected that African GDP will grow by 420 billion by 2025. Marcel just said just now that the GDP overall will grow to 3 billion. So it is expected to grow by this amount by 2025. It's projected that AfCFTA will also result in a 7 trillion market by 2030 and 16 trillion market by 2050. Now, of course, one cannot trade without production of goods and services. While trade is often described as the engine of growth, businesses, in particular private enterprises, are the drivers of production and value addition. So joining me for today's discussion, AfCFTA and business startups in Africa, the risks and opportunities are Nze Chidi Duru, the lead speaker. Duru is an independent-minded entrepreneur, is the chairman of the Grand Tours Limited. The company, through his vision, has dogged disposition to enterprise and has invested in different sectors of the economy, including hospitality, real estate, telecommunications, pension, banking, and financial technology. Duru is a former member of the Nigerian House of Representatives and is a very passionate entrepreneur. November celebrates both his month and the month of entrepreneurship. So we have no better person, both in terms of legislative experience and business, to be the lead speaker today. So I intend to welcome Duru now to speak, and I will introduce the other speakers as they take the floor. Thank you very much. Mr. Duru, you have the floor.
Yeah, first, thank you, Mr. Moderator, Ambassador, or do I use the word professor, as Marcel had used, Otobo. And through you, I would like to also thank the publisher and the management and staff of Prime Business Africa for inviting me to speak on this subject. And of course, I'm not forgetting my other speakers who are also here with us today. And of course, our viewers. I wouldn't go into using whether it's AfCFTA or AfCFTA has become such a jaw-breaking word to abbreviate. So I will just stand with the word agreement.
Okay, very
so
good.
the agreement, I'm asked to speak on the agreement, business startups in Africa, the risk, the opportunities that they present. Mr. Moderator, I think the conversation from my point of view that we're having today is very necessary in the light of the emerging integration of the African economy, for which the publisher and your very good self have also alluded to today. And so for me, today's dialogue grants us an opportunity to deepen our understanding of what the agreement represents and find ways of fostering the greater partnership that is required, the collaborations, and the knowledge exchange to drive the agreement. Again, when I say agreement, please, our listeners must understand that to mean either AfCFTA or to mean AfCFTA. The moderator, just to go back in time to look at the history behind the agreement. It is important that I share the view, as most of us already know, that indeed it is actually the African Union that championed the agreement in Kigali, Rwanda, and that fortuitous meeting took place in March 21, 2008. The moderator have also informed us the number of African countries that have already signed the instrument of ratification. But that process actually began to take place in 2019, when 24 African countries deposited the instrument of ratification. And of course, the whistle was blown in Niamey, Niger on 7th of July. Our listeners, Nigeria, of the countries that have signed the instrument of ratification, was the 34th African country to sign the instrument of ratification. And it's very significant in the sense that Nigeria now became a part of the ecosystem. And we're looking at a market size of 1.3 billion people with a GDP size of 2.5 trillion. I've had the publisher of Prime Business Africa speak to 3 trillion economy. And the effective date for the takeoff of AfCFTA is actually January 1, 2021, when, as we have already said, smart, forward-looking entrepreneurs began to find ways of taking opportunities that the agreement represents and to explore ways on how to derive the benefit that it represents in a manner of speaking. And then began to forge partnership intra-Africa and inter-Africa. Offtake agreements began to be signed in ways that were not thought before around trade in Africa. In my view, the agreement, the AfCFTA, is a very ambitious trade pact with the ambition of creating a single market for goods and services, which would deepen economic integration in Africa. And the tool for this is essentially to reduce, if not eliminate, tariff, and also to eliminate non-tariff barriers within the continent, geared at fostering the single market for goods and services, as well as indeed to also facilitate free movement of people within the continent. As ambitious as the agreement is, again, is realization and to take the benefit of the agreement, there are a lot of challenges, a number of challenges that dot the path. And we are speaking to challenges around infrastructure. We speak to challenges around traditional culture mindset, the political will, access to capital, security in African continent, bureaucracy, or what I would like to call red tape, and of course, the high cost of doing business in Africa. Our very dear DG of the World Trade Organization, who at a time was the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, did make the point at the UBA conference that for Africa to drive benefit of what AfCFTA represents, a number of issues need to be faced. And in particular, she highlighted the issues around logistics. And logistics speaks to infrastructure. So when we speak of logistics, I want us viewers and listeners to look at logistics as addressing issues around land transportation, looking at issues of road, sea, air, and indeed, in my interpretation, any means that enables and facilitates movements of goods and services in Africa, including the movement of people within the continent. Statistics and data that we have also shown that in areas where you have available and quality infrastructure, businesses are bound to do very well, both intra and inter. And of course, a case in point is a similar free trade zone that we have in the Southeast Asia of this world. So to this end, I will project that for us to have the requisite infrastructure to drive the agreement is a necessary for Africa to derive the benefits that the agreement in itself represents. Not only will it facilitate trade across the continent, it will reduce the cost of doing business and of course help to decrease the deficits. But the good news is here. Only recently, the African Development Bank spoke to a size of $430 million highway that connects the southeast part of Nigeria to Cameroon. And again, also alluded to the fact that the African Development Bank will also provide a pocket size of close to $2 billion in helping the African continent to provide the requisite infrastructure that is required in the continent. And when this does happen, you will begin to see massive facilitation of logistics and movement of goods and products from West Africa to the Central Africa. And of course, back home in Nigeria, again, I think that was in June or July, when our president inaugurated and announced the capitalization of our infrastructure PLC to the tune of 15 trillion. And when this happened, it will accelerate the provision of quality and available infrastructure to which the benefits of AfCFTA could be derived from. So the audience, for me, it is important that we note here that the free movement of people will also help to boost the intra-African trade, and more importantly, to help the continent to reap the benefits as already spoken to earlier on. So whilst we have seen progress in transportation across the continent, yet still a lot needs to be done to facilitate this movement of goods and services and products as we speak, including the migration of people from one place to another. It is a journey, it is an arduous task, and indeed very expensive to move within the continent. Only recently, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, the chairman of BUA did say that it is cheaper to import goods from China than it is to move goods from Lagos to Kano. That again speaks to the need and the challenge that the AfCFTA itself represents. And of course, regional transportation have also increased, have improved significantly. I think in the last 2, 3, 4 years, one would have seen it is now possible to move from Nigeria to Ivory Coast or to Cameroon or any of the Francophone states. While it still represents a challenge, but it's still much better than it was many years ago, that you have to fly to Paris and then fly from Paris back to the African country for you to visit any of the Francophone states. And let me talk a little bit on the traditional cultural mindset as part of the challenges that beset the realization of the benefit of AfCFTA. And I want to say this because for startups and entrepreneurs in Africa, as we continue to move to the digital age and economies for which AfCFTA represents, most of the economies in Africa depend and transact on trust. They would rather do business physically than visually. So doing business face-to-face is the know we know how to transact. So when you have most African countries doing business on trust, doing business one-on-one, face-to-face, physically, and the benefit that AfCFTA represents as we move to the digital age and the digital space, fintech and e-commerce, and the new economies that I've spoken about, then which requires doing business by arm's length, as we are conducting this seminar through Zoom visually, then it now represents a risk that we need to face and focus on to be able to encourage people to understand that it is possible to transact across the continent without seeing anybody, just using the platform that the new age and the new economy represents, and then be able to have your goods and products and services delivered to your doorstep. Of course, the issue of security is also another challenge, and it poses quite a lot of issues around here. I'll speak only to that, to the understanding that given the continuing insecurity in most of the African countries, the biggest obstacle to the realization of the objective of the agreement is that as government continue to be tasked to provide the equipment that they will need to equip their military, their focus will be to find ways and means of raising money to fund their budget. And if that becomes the primary purpose of most African countries, it therefore means that the quest of agreeing to reduction in tariff, which is one of the cardinal objectives of the agreement, will be greatly defeated. And on the other side is also the manufacturer. We believe that after the agreement, we help significantly in upscaling and reducing the way manufacturers produce their goods. But hey, if there's no security, of course, what that then means is that the manufacturers of these goods and services and products would not be inclined in providing their goods in those countries that are having this security challenge. And therefore, the market size that I talked about earlier of about 1.3 billion people will not be available to the manufacturer. So the essence of the agreement would largely be defeated. And what causes this insecurity? Socio-economic challenges, marginalization, and bad governance are the drivers of insecurity in the continent, particularly in the peripheral areas of Africa states. The lack of economic opportunities have also made it easier for extremist groups to recruit young people. Poverty and unemployment is also another catalyst for idle hands and idle mind to be recruited to cross the mayhem that exists in some of the African countries that we have spoken of. Political will, I will gloss over this, but just important to say that as much as the policy, the agreement, and the trust of the AfCFTA is important, it is also crucial that the African leaders will be in a position to muster the political will to ensure that the cardinal objective of the agreement in itself is met, and is grounded. And of course, we know that until very recently, when Nigeria unbanned the closure of the border between Nigeria and Benin Republic, it received a lot of flack with other West African countries, because that went against the spirit and the letter of the agreement as we speak. But then countries must do what is necessary to protect itself. But the political will must be such that we have to do it within the letter and spirit of the agreement. Let me talk about red tape, which I spoke of as one of the challenges that dog the benefit of the countries in Africa for realizing the benefit that the agreement in itself represents. And in that sense, permit me to look at the data and the analytics that the World Bank had made available to us. The World Bank did say to us that if fully implemented and we derive the benefit that the agreement is intended to achieve, we'll be looking at close to a 450 billion in income gain. And of that 450 billion income gain, we'll be looking at close to 292 billion of that will come from trade liberalization and reducing red tape, and of course, simplifying custom procedure. And what does that say to us? Just reducing red tape, facilitating the easy movement of goods and products across border, enabling people to travel from one part of Africa to another. The income gain that will be attributed to that is almost 2/3 of the gain, which speaks to 233 billion of the income gain. But of course, Africa must also be clear in that to ensure that they don't allow their countries or the continent to be a dumping ground as a result of the influx of small goods and all that. So there must be, in a way, a giving and a means to speak to the issue. Loss of job is also another challenge. AfCFTA represents the fact, and we do agree, that with one of the benefits will be upscaling the work process in the country, and of course, killing people who do not have the requisite skill. But on the other flip side is also the fact that people may, as a result of that, lose their job. Because when you have easy movement across borders, countries or citizens of countries that are well-to-do, for example, Nigeria, that have the requisite manpower that is very populous, may be necessary that people will migrate from Nigeria to other less endowed countries and then bid for the same jobs that people of those citizens of those countries would ordinarily take as a given that that job belongs to them. So we also must have to watch against that. Therefore, my listeners, I would like to again submit the fact that the agreement is ambitious with regards to the number of countries that are in the continent, with a population size of 1.3 billion people, and then looking at a 3.4 trillion economic bloc. This is a catalyst for industrial development to take off in Africa. It offers wider markets, economies of scale, which is essential to manufacturers to compete. Ms. Moderator, I believe I still have some few minutes to...
No, you don't. In fact, I was about to take the floor to tell you that you have next to 0 minutes left. So sum up. Okay,
just to sum up, to say that we are even beginning now to see some of the benefits that AfCFTA represents by using an example of two companies in Ghana, which we know about. One is the Casapreco, that has taken the benefit of the effective implementation of the agreement effective 1st of January this year to export to a participating party in South Africa their product, which is Alomo bitters. And again, to speak to Glandoa, another company in Ghana, again, have also shipped their product to Guinea. So, and we are seeing many companies of that size being able to do that. So in summary, Mr. Moderator, and just to say, and the audience to say that for me, it represents a huge opportunity, and that opportunities are great. The challenges we've talked about infrastructure around road, rail, political unrest, excessive border bureaucracy will not disappear overnight. Yet, these are areas that we need to continue to engage in and to impress it on policy authorities to rise up and then to do the needful so that African continent could take the benefit that AfCFTA represents. So, Mr. Mode, let me yield the floor again to you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Nze Chidi Duru, for this very lucid presentation. I must say that you have really shown your legislative experience, because I tell you, yesterday I attended by Zoom an AfCFTA presentation, which was led by the Secretary General, Mr. Wamelek Mene, and two other people. And what struck me most was that throughout the presentation, no one referred to the question of security. So I must congratulate you for referring to the security, because at present there are 21 African countries. That's about 40% of African member states who are caught in one form of security crisis or the other. And therefore, if AfCFTA is actually to move, I listed, you have actually identified 10 challenges. Unless after the political leaders can get their handle on the question of the security challenges that they face within their countries and between their countries, there is no prospect that most of the gains expected of AfCFTA will materialize. And I also like the trade-off that you referred to between revenue that will be gained from more trade, but also the tariff that will be lost through trade liberalization. So thank you very much for your very lucid presentation. It's now my understanding that you are going to show some videos. So can you go ahead? Yes, Marcel, can you go ahead with your video?
Yes, it's coming on. It's coming on. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Newstart Publications Limited is a fully registered multimedia company with a vision to be a reliable source of news and analysis on Africa's socio-economic, political trends and development. With a discerning and growing local and international audience, we are well positioned to become a reputable media research agency that supplies relevant data for public and private sector needs. We publish online newspaper titles, conduct media training, form strong partnership, as well as organizing periodic conferences on critical national and international issues. Newstart Publications also runs the Prime Business Africa publication, which goes the extra mile in its quest to serve the first and future worlds for the boardroom and public sector governance. Prime Business Africa offers timely reports focused on startups, in-depth analysis, trending issues, opinion polls, and lots more from our ever-growing Prime TV platform. You can contact us by dialing +234 809 400 0017 or send an email to editor@primebusiness.africa. Visit our website www.primebusiness.africa.
So it's not disruption, as most people imagine. It is the democratization, a world where prosperity and purpose is now being placed within every human being's reach because of access to the internet and computing. Super excited to see where it all ends, because I think the one thing that I continue to be confident about is that it will continue to place power in the hands of people.
Local media in many places has been destroyed. In some parts of the US, especially in the middle of the country, rural areas, it no longer exists, which means there are no watchdogs over our elected governments, which means people lose out. In many cases, it is those consumers who chose to stop supporting local media, actually.
Namely, the reform of the curricula, the whole question of manpower development, and the issue of pedagogy will only come if they are able to have more resources, almost up to equal or more than what the government is giving them. So just a rough calculation. If, for example, the federal government of Nigeria is giving the University of Lagos, just hypothetically, they are giving them $100 or 100 naira every year. If University of Lagos really want to develop or generate autonomy for itself in decision making and policy making on a range of issues, in particular those ones that Moghalu spoke about. I am not bringing the fourth one because the fourth one on regulation falls eminently within the domain of government.
You know, we go there and they're asking you questions like, why are you teaching us this? You know, so they see that people are bringing, you know, products today, financial services today, digital solutions today, and you're just, you know, trying to have them, you know, just offloading it on them. But you're not teaching them how to use these things responsibly.
Dr. Suleiman, who was head of Accenture, was also chair of a board at Unilag at the time. While he was there, Unilag never asked him for money. Not one day did they ask him as alumni to donate. It was after he left that he realized that as part of being MD of Accenture, which is a global company, Accenture would have matched whatever donations he made to Unilag. So if, for the sake of argument, Dr. Suleiman had given Accenture, Unilag 5 million naira, Accenture would have matched that fund. So Unilag would have gotten 10 million naira.
You have people being given cutoff marks that are so ridiculously low that you wonder how people who graduate with those kinds of entrance marks can be, optimally productive in the society.
Your dream job is nowhere near your door. I bet you need to get a side hustle and start thinking fast along the line. I know somebody who just put in 1 million naira. Immediately that happened, the scheme was off. So you should avoid the get rich quick narrative. You need to look out for an idea that helps solve the needs of people around. It's not good enough to just want to solve a problem, but it's not meeting the needs of people. There is no crazy job out there. Okay? These are hacks, these are things you can do every time, and you are done. I remain Esther, your girl, and this is Prime Business Hacks.
Thank you very much. We will now introduce and invite the next speaker, Dr. Chichi Aniogolu Okoye. Chichi Aniogolu Okoye is the Regional Director of Ford Foundation Office in West Africa. She oversees all activities of the foundation geared towards addressing humanitarian challenges in various communities in West Africa. She's a sociologist by training with over 21 years of experience working in different development organizations in the area of gender justice, capacity building, human empowerment, social inequality, advocating good governance, human rights, and generally building and strengthening civil society organization and community developments. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Chichi Aniogolu Okoye. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. And thank you, Prime Business Africa, for inviting me. Thank you, Mr. Duru, for a really good and concise presentation. I want to take a slightly different approach to the conversation today. And I think that what Mr. Duru has said is really important in the sense that if we're looking at AfCFTA, we need to look at how we position ourselves in terms of logistics, infrastructure, and ease of doing business and the rest of it. But I think that there is something that is missing from our business world, from our private sector, which is extremely important, but which we talk less about, but which I think is actually a major deterrent to our ability to participate in international trade. If you look up, AfCFTA is not the first international business policy that Nigeria could have been benefiting from or benefited from. The United States had the African Growth and Accountability Act that is set up in 2000, which gave a lot of concessions to African countries and other developing countries to be able to access American markets. But if we look at the way we have done with that, we have not taken advantage of that compared to maybe even our neighbors, the Ghanaians. And why is that? That's what I want to talk about today. I think a major challenge that is affecting our ability to participate effectively internationally is our business ethics. I'm purely just putting it down to honesty and trust. We find that in Nigeria, doing business, of course, has many challenges. But if we're talking about startups, a startup's biggest equity at starting up is trust and honesty. Because if people don't know you, you're just trying to get into the market, the only thing you really bring at that stage is trust and honesty. And unfortunately, many of us have relegated this completely to the background. I was at a function recently where there were young startups, in the young fintech startups. And I had asked them, and I said, if there was a Nigerian, even somebody who you know, a friend, maybe not so close, but somebody you know, came to you and was asking for you to invest in their business. And a white man who you didn't know was asking you to invest in their business. In all honesty, who would you invest in? And 90% of the audience said they will invest with the white man. We are ready to invest in businesses that we don't know anybody, we don't know the person, simply because of their race and simply because of the fact that we believe that they will be a lot more trustworthy and honest. Because there is nothing else that we know about the person except that we have a perception of who they are and what it is that we believe that we can do. And I think that this is at the heart of what is going wrong in our private sector, in our businesses, and something that our private and our startups really need to pay attention to. If we're going to go into business in West Africa, or in Africa, or not the AfCFTA, we really need to pay attention to the quality of goods that we bring, and also to the quality, of persons that we bring. Many of our exports are returned because they don't meet international standards, and they don't meet international standards deliberately. So you have people who will export beans and half of it will be sand. You will have cashew mixed, with other sediments. And we cannot continue like this. If you're a startup and you want to get into international business, you really need to invest, in yourself first, in doing honest business, because that's what is going to ultimately last. People will not do business. Maybe you'll get away with it the first time, but that will be the end of it. And that is what has been affecting many of us, because we focus on the first time, oh, let's hit it big, let's just do this, and then we can worry about tomorrow. But we forget that, money itself needs to be replicated for it to stay. Money in the bank is not really wealth. It is only when you continue to reinvent and reinvest money that it becomes wealth. And so the fact that, quick business, sharp practice, and everything that is not ethical are the things that we seem to constantly be associated with. We have to do something very, quickly and urgently about this. If we look at the fact that many companies are choosing Ghana over Nigeria, yes, we can say that it's also because of the security issues and some of the infrastructure challenges and things that we have. But we know that Nigeria is a big market, and we know that we are not the most unsafe country in the world. But I think that a lot of people have been burned with the relationships and the kind of businesses that they have had to do in this country. that has made it extremely difficult for them to progress and to do honest business. And the challenge we have is that the more dishonest we are, the more dishonest people we will attract, because like attracts like. So we end up with rogue businesses coming into the country, people who themselves are full of sharp practice, who then want, to outdo us as we try to outdo them. And so for me, for a startup to really excel, both internally and across Africa and in the world, we really need to begin to prioritize honesty and etiquette and integrity. We really need to begin to look, even within our own, even in terms of being able to raise funds and etiquette and equity. Many of us, if we want to start a business, the first people who will support you in a business is your family and friends. And many times, even when family and friends have, they will give excuses because we don't say what we mean. We don't return money that we borrow, because we assume, oh, if they gave me, then it is because they had, and so we don't give it back. But of course, you're going to need those people in the future. And so you may get away with it if you're lucky enough to have gotten money from them for the first time, but then you're not likely to get money anymore from them. And many people are not even able to get money the first time, simply because of the fact that, family and friends don't trust that they will get their money back. And so there's so many things that we are facing as a people that, that we may not be able to address on the individual level. But I believe that we can address the issue of equity, of honesty, of integrity at the personal level. And once we begin to improve that, I think that we will have a lot more opportunity. We'll see a lot more opportunities open up to us. A lot of people purchase things from China without ever going to China. Some people, of course, have been duped, but many times, the goods come. You send money to the company, they package it, they send it back to you, and they're able to do business. So, which means that you don't have to rely, like Mr. Duru said, on the people who are just coming to your doorstep. But how many people are going to trust that if they sent money to a Nigerian business person, that the products or the produce that they purchased or they want to purchase will arrive at their doorstep? Maybe less than 1%. And so we're losing a huge market simply because we don't have, the integrity, the trust, the honesty that is required in business. And I think that as we discuss AfCFTA and many other, programs and policies around the world that we can benefit from, we shall remember that our ability, that being trustworthy and being trusted is number one and still remains the number one thing when it comes to business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chichi and Yagolo Okoye, for those very lucid comments. The sociology in you comes out because you have brought the issues of values and ethics. By the way, the issue about which you spoke, trust and honesty, was in my listing of Duru's comment number 7, where you talked about traditional cultural mindset. Now, I think you've made some very, very important points with regard to both the issue of how integrity, trust, honesty, and ethics plays in business and the implication for Nigeria. And the example you cited about Ghana is a very interesting one because, as you rightly said, people prefer Ghana to Nigeria for at least 3 things. One is the security. People feel safer in Ghana. In fact, even Nigerian elites, as you know, most of them spend their weekends in Ghana these days. Second is the question of trust. The average foreigner, even average African, trust Ghanaians more than Nigeria. Then finally, although you did not mention that, the infrastructure, the state of infrastructure is much better. But the question of integrity, of trust, you really hit it home when you say that even family members don't trust each other. So if family members can't trust you in business, how are you going to be trusted by other people. And the final point that you referred to very obliquely is the question of the link between trust, making money, and wealth. Because there are three things about money. You've got to make the money, but as you said, if you don't make it honestly, it will vanish. But after making it, you've got to manage it. Then in managing it, you have to multiply it. Is that ability to manage and multiply that creates wealth, not just making it, because you can make it by dubious means. So thank you very much for those very eye-opening comments, especially for those who want to start business. Thank you very much. Now, it's my pleasure to call upon Dr. Bumi Oyisha, who is the next speaker. Oyisha is a foremost educationist and international development strategist. I think I participated with her in the SEEDS project, the SEEDS seminar on higher education. She's a co-founder of the Lekki Peninsula College, Nursery and Primary Schools, and director of Equality Through Education Foundation. A prolific writer, Oyisha has written several short stories published in anthologies and literary journals, and edited a collection of short stories for the Association of Nigerian Authors. She has also written and produced television dramas and series and serials, stage plays, and radio plays. Oyisha is also an accomplished writer, filmmaker, and social science researcher with over 30 years of work experience, focusing on providing quality and affordable education, tackling community development issues, and also promoting gender equality. It's now my pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Bumi Oyisha. Please, you have the floor. Hello?
I forgot to unmute myself.
Okay, all right. And we also not see your picture. Nice to see you again, madam. I know both of us participated in the tertiary
Thanks for
education.
having me. And thanks for organizing this forum. Thanks, Dr. Mbamelu, for inviting me. So I just started by saying, as a Pan-Africanist, I believe that AfCFTA is long overdue. I will, however, not dwell on the opportunities offered by the scheme because they have been very broadly publicized. I want to focus instead on the ways in which it can negatively influence, impact the lives of women if proper attention is not paid to the peculiar ways in which the opening up of borders can affect women entrepreneurs. Because while the general objectives of AfCFTA mentions the significance of gender equality for the development of international economics, blah, 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 it does not go any further in factoring in how women will be impacted. This is a continent which does not only have 33 out of the 47 least developed countries, but it is also the continent with the greatest level of income disparity. You know, that any other continent where free trade area has been introduced, like ASEAN in Asia and the CARICOM in the Caribbean. Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt are responsible for about 50% of the continent's GDP. This disparity should make us more than slightly wary about the unexpected outcomes of AfCFTA, especially now with Ethiopia, which has the most dynamic capitalist economy, is preoccupied with battling itself. First, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel here. As such, in order for AfCFTA to achieve the desired level of economic achievement for Africa, it is imperative for us to be mindful of the pitfalls which have attended globalization, which, like AfCFTA, is dependent on a neoliberal model of rapid and aggressive liberalization. I believe that we need to problematize AfCFTA's sequencing, which favors rapid tariff liberalization. Because how many African countries are really ready for this? How will it affect women entrepreneurs, be they startups or not, and other marginalized groups? When tariffs are removed, how will it impact the revenue of the country and the ability to provide social services that women and other vulnerable groups depend on? On a continent which is plagued by gender inequalities like Africa, we should expect that AfCFTA will affect women and other economically vulnerable groups in ways that will be different from how it impacts men. As it is, women have very little access to control and economic participation and economic resources. They have very little participation in decision making. And as globalization demonstrates, women's participation in some industries will shrink due to trade liberalization. For example, countries which are currently successful and bigger markets, which are successful in particular industries, say for instance, textile and so on, may find, that they are able to employ more women as newer and bigger markets open up for them. However, nations which are not strong in that same industry might struggle to compete with the importation of cheaper products from countries which are stronger in the sector. This will mean that women in such disadvantaged countries will have fewer jobs in that industry, and there's no guarantee that the strength of their countries in that industry will be able to make up for the shortfall. After Annex provisions on rules of origins, standards, and phytosanitary measures should also be scrutinized. Also, the nature of the annex rules seem neither sufficiently flexible to improve upon market access for African products, nor are they robust enough, at least in my mind, to defend African producers against non-African products and enterprises, as one of the speakers already alluded to. Such limitations are likely to affect women entrepreneurs more than men because of their limited productive capacities to integrate in the market. We have seen how this has played out as a result of globalization. Again, when we look closely at other schemes, similar to AfCFTA, like ASEAN and CARICOM, we will see that while in some instances, women's employment increased in the unskilled sector, women's ability to expand their businesses still face several barriers because of gender inequalities. Again, are the provisions in AfCFTA agreement adequate to ensure the necessary policy space to support a wide range of domestic SMEs and other businesses that are operating under constrained economic business environments? The capacities of SMEs and MSMEs need to be developed in order to compete against larger, relatively better financed enterprises from other countries. I don't mean to be pessimistic about AfCFTA. I am completely committed to any process that will move us closer to the achievement of the Pan-African goal. But I believe that the lessons learned from globalization, if properly acknowledged, will help structure AfCFTA better. For instance, as global level trade liberalization has led to increased privatization of public goods and services and essential services, and the impact of this has had to be borne by the poorest in the world. How will AfCFTA protect essential goods and essential services from privatization? As such, it is doubtful whether or not the proposed 10% for sensitive products is sufficient to facilitate intra-African trade, especially for women-owned startups, SMEs, MSMEs. To ensure that preferential tariff options are not restricted for small-scale operators, a detailed analysis of their impact, of their implications on small-scale operators under AfCFTA should be conducted at individual country level. We also need to pay attention to the ways in which trade liberalization can affect female capacities and control over household incomes and spending? Will it create or destroy sources of independent income for women? At the level of individual countries, there needs to be gender analysis to determine how essential services that women need will continue to be funded, or some of them have never even been funded to start with. So how will they be funded when revenues drop as a result of the removal of tariffs? Another area of concern is how regional integration will impact local food systems. How will AfCFTA be any different from other free trade initiatives that prioritize male-dominated crops and agricultural commodities? The question about how AfCFTA will affect women's income is really crucial because they constitute a large percentage of informal cross-border traders. The AfCFTA can, if properly structured, improve women's opportunities in the area of cross-border trade. However, in order to ensure that women entrepreneurs leverage new trade opportunities and expanding markets that we hope AfCFTA will usher in, policymakers and trade negotiators must integrate gender concerns into AfCFTA provisions. Some challenges which have been identified as constraining women's border trading, that are particular to them, have to do with the insecurity and gender-based harassment. So these challenges must all be fully addressed if AfCFTA is to be effective. It's not enough to focus on enhanced opportunities that will come as a result of increased trade. There is need for a more comprehensive understanding of how African women will really fare as a result of AfCFTA. Even while the agreement vaguely promises opportunities for women's economic empowerment in terms of increased jobs and income, but because women occupy precarious spaces within most countries due to deep-rooted resource inequality and the perpetuation of gender-segregated work, they are very vulnerable to economic disruptions. For instance, without calculating the costs and benefits outside of paid work and marketed outputs, these disadvantages will only get worse because women are generally the ones who bear the brunt of unpaid work. Now, rigorous gender and economically just social impact assessment should therefore be carried out at the regional and national levels. Such studies must look critically at impacts of women's economic rights and the longer-term economic justice outcomes. The liberation timeframes for each country should be based on the outcomes of such impact assessments. The idea that there will be mechanisms that mitigate the cost of adjustments which have been proposed as part of the agreement is also most welcome. However, again, continental integration and adjustment funds, which will be set up to assist the poorer countries, must be based on gender equality. AfCFTA should be also safeguard labor rights by including a framework which will reduce the abuse of workers' rights, which is prevalent in many countries on the continent. Legalized exploitation of workers through EPZs, many of whom will be women, must be avoided with the AfCFTA through the inclusion of a pan-African workers' rights. To summarize very quickly, the gender differentiated effects of trade liberalization will be felt at the macro, meso, and micro levels. Because of the inherent differences between women and men in their access to assets, human capital, labor markets, and labor earnings. At the micro level, it is hoped that gender gaps in market participation will narrow sectors that expand through trade liberalization and more female intensive than the sectors that that contract. So at the micro level, trade liberalization will either expand or contract female control over household spending, and depending on whether or not participating countries are committed to creating safe nets in the form of resources that safeguard dependent income for women. The gender aspects, cannot be ignored if we are to actually benefit as a continent from this laudable scheme after.
Thank you very much, Madam, for that very interesting presentation, in which you have called attention to what I will call a seemingly neglected area in the whole architecture of the AfCFTA, namely what you call the potential negative impact of AfCFTA on women, and drawing from the experiences of other existing agreements both within Africa and outside Africa. And in fact, your presentation is both an emphasis on the need to learn the lessons of the adverse impact of globalization on women, but more importantly, a cautionary note that all the promised opportunities and benefits of AfCFTA will not materialize insofar as women is concerned because of the various problems that you pointed to. You concluded by asking for, in my view, 3 very important studies. And I wish really that somehow, Marcel, when the story about this thing is carried, you should reflect on this, because what Dr. Oyesen has said, there are 3 important studies that he's calling for. And I think these studies will be very, very interesting. One is a study on the impact of AfCFTA on women, especially SMEs owned by women. Second, a gender analysis of the overall impact of AfCFTA on women. And thirdly, how will AfCFTA impact food production, and within that, the role of women in it. And she calls for making sure that the adjustment funding. And yesterday, the Secretary General of AfCFTA told us at another seminar that ADB and Afrexim Bank are now going to make some money for what they call adjustment financing, precisely what you referred to, Madam. So if I can see various institutions being interested in these studies, for example, I can see ECA being interested in this study on the impact of AfCFTA on women as SMEs. I can see FAO being interested on the question of food production and the role of women in it. And I can see AU and even possibly African Development Bank being interested in the overall gender analysis impact. Now, the reason why I find today's presentation very interesting is that each of you, especially the 2 female participants, which is why I have been emphasizing the need to bring female. And Marcel was teasing me that I'm lucky that what I've been advocating for is going to materialize, because we have brought more women this time than men. And I'm very happy because Dr. Anyagulu Okoye brought the question of trust, ethics, integrity into business. And these are things that people just gloss over. They are key. And Dr. Bumi Oyesen has brought the question of what will be the impact of AfCFTA on women in all these ramifications, in small business enterprises, in food production, in and even the effect of disruption on the effect that AfCFTA will have, because AfCFTA is going to have significant disruptive effects. And her argument is that the women are likely to be those who will suffer from this disruption most. Therefore, there is need to make sure that they are involved both in decision making and giving them some greater leverage in terms of when the tariffs are removed, how will it impact on them and how do we compensate them, which is the purpose of the adjustment funding. I've heard of this adjustment funding in 2 last meetings. I've heard one in Paris and the one in Washington yesterday, but I don't know how it's going to be organized. But I think you have made a very strong case about how such adjustment funding must be configured in a way that women are essential beneficiaries of it. And so, Madam, I would like to thank you again and other speakers for these rich perspectives that you have brought and enriched the discussion very much. Now, I understand that Marcel wants to play one more video. Then after that, we will go to the Q&A session. Am I right, Marcel?
Yes, Ambassador, you're correct. Thank you very much.
So can you play? Nancy, then we go to Q&A.
No, we still have one. Okay.
Yeah, but the other thing I want to say is that there are more people watching this program on YouTube than what you are seeing on Zoom. So I thought I should make that announcement. In fact, I understand hundreds are watching it on YouTube. So especially the speaker should take solace from that there are more people watching it than the number that we are seeing appear on the Zoom. Yes, Marcel, over to you.
Yes, the subscription video from Nancy. Okay.
Okay. I also understand that, Marcel, you have a lead question for the lead speaker. So can you go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, okay. Thank you, moderator, for giving me that. I was thinking perhaps I should be the last to speak, but I would just want to appreciate some members of our board who are here. Professor Stella Okunna is here. Professor Okunna is the Deputy Chairman, the Vice Chairman of the Board of New Style Publications Limited, publishers of Prime Business Africa. We also have Professor, I call him Professor, he likes to go with Mr., but all his jobs, everything he does is professorial. Obiemeke Kwe, the great Jacksonite is here. I just want to say thank you for that. And a whole lot of others who are here who just joined us while the speakers were going on, especially on YouTube. I must apologize, most people could not connect, so they got to they are on YouTube right now, even though we streamline participation here so that we could get more people participating on YouTube to avoid noise. So you are welcome. That I was thinking I should ask my questions loud, but since the moderator has called me, my question goes to the lead speaker, Nzeduru, and then the second to Chichi, Dr. Chichi. Dr. Chichi spoke about trust in business, especially for startups at different levels. I want you, Dr. Chichi, to explain to what extent corporate governance could ameliorate the problem of trust. Are they related? If on a personal level, the business owner does not have the requisite trust required, but has put in place the right corporate governance for the business as an entity, to what extent does good corporate governance dilute the problem of trust in startups? Especially when you consider the fact that you start up before you build a strong corporate governance structure. And then for Duru, congratulations once again. This month is your month. You believe in entrepreneurship. You believe that November is a month for entrepreneurship, and you keyed into this that we are doing because you believe that the topic speaks to what you believe in. I'm asking you, you have expressed commitment to entrepreneurship, especially in the fintech space. So to what extent does what Chichi said about trust informed your participation in some of these startups, especially in the fintech sector? So Chichi could take my question first, and then Nzeduru.
Okay, all right. So Chichi, over to you. Then after that, Nzeduru.
Okay, thank you very much. I think for me, just to be clear, I think it's first important to define corporate governance, and that is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. The structures, the practices, the processes that they put in place in a company in order to ensure that the company, functions efficiently. I think it's difficult to separate the two. And the topic of today is about startups, and that's why I focused on startups. It will be difficult to have a corporate governance structure if you don't have personal integrity yourself. And before a company can get to a level where they have corporate governance, the individual or the individuals, who set up the company or who set up the initiative will have to bring their own trust, equity. Even having that run is a challenge for us. So we see that many of our businesses, don't exist after the founder is gone, because we don't have a strong corporate governance structure. And also because we run our businesses as one-man businesses. So the structures are really not there. So if we are looking at trust and integrity, it's important, of course, to have corporate governance, but I don't think that you can create a structure and a system that does not reflect who you are as an individual and as a person. As you know, there are many businesses and that circumvent the structure that they put in place. They put in financial controls, but they will be the ones to come in to ask the finance person to do things differently from what the policy of the organization or the company has said. So we need to have personal integrity, because it is that personal integrity that will translate into corporate governance. The two, I believe, are mutually exclusive, mutually connected.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, and especially for drawing the link between corporate governance and honesty. In fact, a number of the companies that ran foul of the Security and Exchange Commission rules of the US was precisely because of this divergence between laid down corporate rules and personal instructions on what to do and what not to do. So, Mr. Duru, the next question is for you. Then after that, we'll open the floor to the other members of the public.
So I would just like to, in a way, intervene and again to agree essentially with Chichi and Agolio Okoye on the point that she had made very strongly, that a distinction between corporate governance and personal integrity is basically more like a distinction without a difference. Because a business reflects the character and the personality of the people that are driving the organization. So if it's basically an issue of copy and paste, you paste the usual things that we do in business, and then you have the best business plan writers come to your company, advise you, and then have in place a corporate governance policy document for your business. It's just a matter of time. The personality of the drivers of the business will begin to show. So with regards to the question that Mr. Mbamalu, publisher of Prime Business Africa, asked, to what extent have the issues around trust and integrity driven the businesses that were involved in, particularly in the fintech space? And the example I gave with respect to the culture mindset, the issues around trust, have always been embedded in the businesses that we're involved in, because at the end of the day, it is who you are that people will be addressing and people will be relating with to determine whether you are the kind of organization, the kind of business that they would like to transact with. And at the end, and if they do find that you speak and reflect what you say you are, like the Igbos will say, if you are an Ekweme, whatever you say is what the business represents, at the end of the day, they will feel more comfortable coming back to transact with you. So underpinning our businesses is built around the concept of trust and integrity. And I thank Okoye and Agolio Okoye for forcefully bringing up that issue as one of the things that startups and entrepreneurship must first reflect before they undertake any business enterprise.
Thank you very much. Yeah, now, I am not seeing any question on the chat board, but I'm giving the opportunity to people to raise their hands. Let me see, did I see some hand raised? I have not seen any hands raised yet, but if there are people who want to ask questions, please can you either raise your hand or speak out if we can hear you.
Mr. Jama Nikolabo is here, a member of, sorry, I forgot to mention him, a member of the editorial board and also on the board of New Start Publications Limited. He's also here. Mr. Jama Nikolabo is almost like our veteran moderator for this project, and he's there. So in case he has a question to ask or comments to make, I think
please
he can take the floor.
Yes, Jama.
No question for now. Let's take question from the floor.
What of comments? No comment. Okay, question from the floor, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have my hands raised.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. I didn't see. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for the opportunity. Let me also take the opportunity to thank Dr. Mbamalo and Prime Business for organizing this very interesting gathering. My comment is actually going to be more of a comment than a question. As you may know, I worked for African Export-Import Bank until recently, and we were heavily involved in the establishment of the AfCFTA. And one of the things that went on there was that there was a recognition of the fact that the AfCFTA will have an impact on countries, some of them negative. And that was why the plans were made to find ways to cushion some of these. So when you talked about the adjustment facility, Afrexim Bank has actually set aside $1 billion to help countries to cushion that impact. So that's one of the things. And also, secondly, one of the challenges also of the AfCFTA was the question of how to manage cross-border payments, because that would be a challenge. So the bank has also introduced what is called a Pan-African payment and settlement system, which is now piloting, which again allows people to buy things from different countries. So you are in Nigeria, you want to buy something from Ghana, you pay in Naira, and the person who is in Ghana, who is receiving the payment, receives in cedis. So there's no foreign exchange involved in the transaction. So that is something that has already been put in place. It's now going live already. So that's one of the things that have been put in place to help to address some of the challenges of the implementation of the AfCFTA. Now, coming to the SMEs at this point, I think one of the challenges really that affects African businesses so far is that there's a very a challenge in terms of the quality standards that are being used. So you find that most exports from Africa, don't get accepted when they are exported. So that is something that the SMEs need to really take into account. There has to be a very strong emphasis on maintaining quality standards. If they can do that, then their goods are viable when they are shipped outside. So those are some of the things I think that are important to take into account as we progress on this discussion. Thank you. I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much. I'm going to give the floor next to Modestus Nwalu. But before I do that, I just want to make a comment by the last speaker on the Afrexim Bank adjustment facility of $1 billion. Actually, Dr. Benedict Orama spoke about it at an event I attended in Paris at the middle of the month. But I thought what Dr. Oyesni was saying was, how will this be structured in a way to take account of how the women will suffer the vulnerabilities of the disruptions that will come from the launching of AfTA. Now, I don't know whether, Obi, you have any answer to that, but that was the thrust of the comment that Madam made. Okay, I give the floor now to Modestus Nwalu. Please, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nwolo Modestus. My question goes this way. I don't know if there is any government representative in the house, but because I work with small businesses, and I understand that most of them do not understand what you are talking about when you talk about AfCFTA. So how do we educate the small businesses? How do we position them so that they will be able to benefit from the gains of these agreements? So I don't know if there is anyone that can help me clear it, because I'm talking to some of them, working with some of them, but I see that they don't understand what it's all about, how to go about it, and how to position themselves so that they can gain the benefits that we arrive from the agreements.
Well, thank you very much. I can take a stab at that. Now, there are two things that I would like to bring to your attention. First of all, there is a Nigerian Association of Small Businesses, and in addition, there is NASIMA. I think that the best thing that could be done for the SMEs, especially if they're interested in trading, because don't forget there are two types of SMEs basically. There are those whose goods and services are almost exclusively for the domestic market. Those ones will not be very much interested in this business, this question of intra-African trade. But there are those whose goods and services will be traded across borders. Now, I think what could be done in order to educate them will be to convey a series of workshops under the umbrella of the Nigerian Association of Small Business Enterprises, or in fact, with the sponsorship of the Nigerian Bank of Industry, because the Nigerian Bank of Industry has a big arm on this. I think that will be the way to go. Thank you. Is there any other person who wants to ask question? I'm not seeing any hands raised. No additional hands raised.
Oyiza Adaba.
Okay, is he in the chat room?
Yes, I think so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he's posed the question. Is the one who posed this question? No. There is a question. Let me read this question from Izuchukwu Okosi from YouTube. So with the issues of trust, is Dr. Anyangolo Okoye who will answer this one. So with the issues of trust, is it possible for Nexim, that's the Nigeria Export Bank, and other financial institutions to give grant to startup? Question for you from Izuchukwu Okosi. Dr. Anyangolo Okoye, that question is for you.
Yes, I mean, I think that the issue of trust is something that has to be dealt with at the personal level. I think that being able to get, I think that's part of the reason why getting loans to Nigeria is so difficult, and why, all banks, it doesn't matter whether it's the industrial bank or Bank of Industry or development assisted initiatives, ask for so much collateral, so much documentation, because of that lack of trust. So I don't think that it makes giving loans impossible. It just makes it a lot more difficult. And I think that we ultimately will benefit if our trust levels, if our transparency levels, if our honesty levels increase, because it will mean that we will have easier access, not just to loans from Nigeria. There's actually money available internationally. There's a lot of money that is looking for where to invest. Unfortunately, we're not getting it because we don't meet a lot of the criteria, not just the trust or honesty issue, but the other things that we don't meet. But I think that people overlook things, when they can trust an initiative and an idea. So I don't think that it will stop people from getting loans. It just makes it harder. And I think that we can make it a lot easier for ourselves, and reduce the conditions and the terms of loans if we are, if we adopt a much more honest and integrity approach.
Thank you very much. Marcel, you said there was a question from somebody. Can the person pose the question, or do you read it out?
Oyiza Adaba, she hasn't, maybe. Oyiza?
Okay, Oyiza Adaba. Okay, I see.
Please unmute yourself. Okay. I think you could go on maybe until she's able to.
Okay. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat room, and I'm not seeing any hands raised in the participants.
Okay, may I ask, in the absence of a question, may I ask Nzeduru, still talking about trust from Dr. Chichi, to what extent, because he spoke to some constraints implementing the AfCFTA. My question would be, to what extent would that divide that we have between the Francophone and the Anglophone countries in terms of the trust, issues of trust, which actually has been the bane of having a mutual currency, you know, to get, which is one of the things required for this AfCFTA to work properly. How do you think we'll be able to resolve that issue of trust that has put that divide between Francophone and Anglophone countries? Any solution?
Okay, thank you, Marcel. I was just typing in to be unmuted to come in to speak to the other question around loan, whether it's possible for SMEs to easily, or where they could go to access capital for the ideas they have and the business interests that they have. And I think that Adagolo Koye did speak to it. And also for me to say that the issues around trust is a two-way traffic. Trust for the entrepreneur or the startup is also the other person of trust of the startup from the lending institution. The reality in Nigeria today is that the interest rate is usually on the high side. And the banks have made it very impossible implicitly for startups and entrepreneurs to be able to access facilities from the bank. So, and when they do access that facility, from the one, it's very costly, and it makes it impossible for the entrepreneurs and startups to be able to earn the profit or the bottom line that will enable them to be able to pay off that that debt. So it is quite a huge challenge. Now back to the issue of the trust factor between the Francophone and the Anglophone countries in Africa, particularly in the West Coast. And I'm sure Ambassador would speak to the issue very much more than I would. The challenge that affected ECOWAS was only around the issues of the trust, because the parties, the countries in ECOWAS did see the advantage for the countries that are in the ECOWAS community. But the reality is that the who was paying the bill, dictating the tone, were from the outside of ECOWAS. So you find that even when the agreement had been signed to a common currency within the ECOWAS community, the reality was that the colonial masters, if you would like to, or those who were dictating the policy statement of those countries, pulled them back and then gave them instructions on what needed to be done. So as much as we see the advantage, as much as the countries in Africa see the advantage that AfCFTA represents for their country and their people, we must also be very cautious to agree that the political will to see this through is something that the respective leaders in these countries must champion, so that would not allow a divide that, in spite of the advantages, we are beginning to take dictations from outside of Africa whether to continue with the AfCFTA or not.
Yeah, thank you very much for that interesting response to that question. And in fact, the issue of trust on the currency was illuminated by the fact that although ECOWAS had decided to use the word echo, you remember what happened? The echo as the currency, the Francophone went around and adopted echo even before ECOWAS would launch it. So exactly, that's underlying the trust.
And we think that in Parliament it was deliberate.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, so Marcel, we are at the 1.5 hour mark, and I see a lot of people are already leaving. So if there are no more questions, I will propose to give you the floor from here to give your vote of thanks so that we can adjourn. Over to you, Marcel.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Otobo, and thank you, everyone. Our lead speaker is Chidi Duru. Thank you, Dr. Chichi Anyagolo Koye. It was really an experience, a very busy person, and we are glad we finally, we're able to get you here. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you our speakers, other speakers who actually illuminated this topic. We are truly grateful that we've been able to have a successful 5th edition of Prime Minister Africa's Seeds. This program will continue. We're not going to stop. It's a monthly program. The next edition will come up in January. We'll allow people to go on their break. But this December, we're still going to have what we call our Seed Special. Seed Special will dwell on people with disability, because on the 4th of December, we are having celebrating a kind of day for disabled persons globally, United Nations Day for disabled persons. So Prime Minister Africa will be having a discourse around employability of people with disabilities. And we implore you to join us. We'll reach out to you. In 4 days' time, we'll be convening again to talk about that. So thank you very much, generally. We implore you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This particular package we go live, is already live on YouTube. So just hit the button subscribe, and then you will be able to get our uploads from now on. Other social media handles, we also invite you to subscribe. Thank you very much. Just to say thank you, and thank you for all the people I couldn't mention their names here. Thank you very much for coming. Please keep being present at our programs and making it a huge success. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye to all the speakers and participants.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Newstart Publications Limited. Newstart Publications Limited is a fully registered multimedia company with a vision to be a reliable source of news and analysis on Africa's socio-economic, political trends and development. With a discerning and growing local and international audience, we are well positioned to become a reputable media research agency that supplies relevant data for public and private sector needs. We publish online newspaper titles, conduct media training, form strong partnership, as well as organizing periodic conferences on critical national and international issues. Newstart Publications also runs the Prime Business Africa publication, which goes the extra mile in its quest to serve the first and future worlds for the boardroom and public sector governance. Prime Business Africa offers timely reports, focus on startups, in-depth analysis, trending issues, opinion polls, and lots more from our ever-growing Prime TV platform. You can contact us by dialing +234 809 400 0017 or send an email to editor@primebusiness.africa. Visit our website www.primebusiness.africa.